talk about labels for a minute.
Yeah, so I get questions from guys too that maybe are just looking to get in the industry, familiar with drones, not familiar with farming, potentially not familiar with, and I guess a little bit of background. When I went into drone spraying in this business, I primarily went into it to spray fungicide on corn and soybeans.
Yeah.
In my area of the Midwest of Iowa, to me, that's the greatest, most applicable thing that these drones are good for or great for is the fungicide application. So every label obviously is going to have all of the questions to or all the answers to all of your questions, whether it be rate for what product or what crop. A lot of guys ask me, well, what wind speed can you spray in? Well, my general answer is the drone itself will handle higher winds than you will ever want to spray in.
Yeah.
I think most labels are 3 to 10 miles an hour. Now, 10 miles an hour should be your cutoff because you're not doing a quality job at that point.
Yeah.
And that's what the label says. You need to more or less live and die by the label. Another thing we've talked about here today, not yet on camera, but the PPE stuff. What should we be doing PPE wise? And honestly, for me to go out and spray today, I'm probably not dressed adequately enough. Brandon, you've got jeans on. I know most labels, wear gloves, wear long sleeves, wear long pants, have the pants tucked outside of your boots, have your sleeve tucked outside of your gloves, so that if you do get spillage on you, you're not getting runoff into your gloves or into your shoes and that contact with the skin.
Yeah, and we've seen it's so important, when our guys are going out to make sure that when they're, loading and they're tank mixing and doing these bigger batch loads, during those times to not only wear the PPE that they wear when we're flying, but to wear the full respirator, to wear the full face shield, to wear an apron, the higher gloves we wear, and most importantly overall, making sure that each trailer and each truck has an eye wash station.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to anyone who's an eye doctor or anything like that, herbicides getting under contact lenses, herbicides just getting into your eye at all, any pesticide getting into your eye can cause extreme amounts of damage if not, taken care of immediately. Going out there, making sure you're really cleaning out your eyes, wearing glasses, but the face shield when we're mixing is a guarantee that we have to have on, because all it takes is one time. And like you said, most of the time for you out in the Midwest, maybe where it's flat, you have that consistent wind where we're on terrain and you're spraying in a valley, how that wind is coming up that valley.
You get that swirl and that
you can't really
inconsistency.
predict it. So usually around 6 to 8 miles per hour is where we're kind of drawing the line at a consistent spray. We do have days where it's super low and we get gusts up to 6. That's totally fine. It's where 6 to 8 mile per hour sustained and we're doing terrain. That's usually our cutoff.
And you said something. You said the respirators too, and you've also commented that you do a ton of dry fertilizer work.
Yeah.
Well, if you're constantly loading, whether it be urea or granular P and K or any of the granulars, you get a fine dust.
Yep.
There's no overkill when it comes to safety and personal protection and stuff like that. If you feel you need the respirator, gloves, what have you, you can't do too much when it comes to safety.
And even being properly covered, a lot of guys don't think about it when they're doing fertilizer and these granular products. But imagine, we've seen it. You have an employee who goes and gets a tattoo over the weekend while you guys are off, and they come in Monday morning and they're loading fertilizer into the drone. That actually it's an open wound on their body that needs to be extremely properly covered, or just take the day off.
Right.
Don't go out and spray those days. Don't do those things during that time of the year, because safety is the biggest thing and you're dealing with inorganics. And when you're dealing with these inorganics, there's a higher level of assumed risk. And like we talked about, checking the product label. Every single pesticide that we spray or you can spray has an EPA number. And if it has an EPA number, that means it has a set of rules. It has an SDS, which is a safety data sheet, as well as the label itself. And I don't know about for you guys, but for us, and I think all across the U.S., label is the law. If you're going against the label, you're breaking the law, and the label is created for a reason. Most of the time, if you go spray Windex or something, you're never going to read that label. But with pesticides and what we do, the label is the most important part. You do have to take the time to go, okay, with the specific crop that I'm working, what are possible restrictions? You do a lot of corn, we do a lot of hay, pasture, and with Grazon and all these other products, there's big restrictions on when you can spray it, how long after can you spray this hay and then go sell it. And most of the time, if we're spraying Grazon, it has to be for hay that's not for sale.
Yep.
And if you're not reading the product label, you're not going in and figuring those things out. When is the reentry period? You know, you don't want to be sending guys through there running around when that reinterval period hasn't lapsed yet.
Right.
Especially without proper PPE. That's the whole reason we use the drone, is to keep the guys out of the field, to keep them away from the product, so we don't want to go send them back in there early.
Yep. And another thing I get asked a lot, so I have customers that I've sold drones to that want to use their drones for every bit of spraying that they do in a field. So herbicide on corn, herbicide on beans, maybe some cover cropping stuff, fungicide, and basically use it for everything. Well, what can I spray with my drone? Another thing you can find on the label. If it has an aerial label, you can spray it with the drone. Treat it the same way as essentially airplane, helicopter. So some of the products that go on beans, anything dicamba based, or like the Enlist platform, those are not aerial approved. So, you know, if you're going out to spray your soybeans as a post, make sure you're following that label and have a product that is legal to even use. Like you said, the label is the law. It is going to answer all of the questions that you have. And those labels are readily available right on the jug that you're using. If you don't have the jug, you can Google it. You can find it on places like greenbook.net. The labels are out there, and it's the exact same label that'll be on the jug, and it'll have every answer to every question.
And seeing important things like buffer zones. Buffer zones are another big one that we've been running in more and more into, especially where we are in the mountains. You have a lot of creeks and housing that do border some of these properties. So making sure that you're using proper buffer zones and making sure that you can get a good application, but that you're not affecting anyone that...
Sensitive areas.
Yeah, and that you're not affecting anyone that's around the premises that isn't intended. They're not the intended target. You know, that's where we talk about drift. Those are those things. And it'll also tell you, hey, can I mix certain products with this? What do I have to use a certain type of drift agent? Ionic, non-ionic? Are there certain restrictions there? Because also with improper mixing, you can use 2 pesticides one day, and the next day, because you didn't properly mix them, boom, they clot up, they get hard. And really, you talk about the worst day. The worst day is trying to get a spray tank clean that has had a bad mixture in it.
Or something that settles out.
Well, exactly,
out.
And all of them have good descriptions on how to properly jar test what's extremely compatible with it, as well as other things like Nutrien and all these other companies that have people there to help you. What formulations can help you, what can work to achieve the desired results, and then it's your job as the applicator, go double check all these things. Go check that the rates that you're getting are proper for the aerial application rates, because we see aerial application rates and boom sprayer rates are very, very different depending on the crop that you're trying to spray.
Yep. And yeah, kind of the end all be all of it. It's your responsibility as the applicator to make sure that it gets done properly.
Yep.
You know, a lot of things can get lost in translation from either an agronomist out to you being the final application. It is your job to make sure you're doing it correctly, because in turn, or in the end, you're the one putting it out on the field, and you want to do the best job for the grower. I want to touch on another thing. You mentioned having an eye wash station on all of your trailers, and we know every trailer is different. Everybody prefers a different trailer. I personally, when I first started out, had a completely enclosed trailer. One thing that isn't the greatest about that is you're mixing a lot of those herbicides, pesticides in an enclosed area. It can get pretty potent in there. So having good ventilation or mixing in a well ventilated area are some of the pros to having an open trailer, an open spot on the trailer. Just all things that guys need to think about when they're building a full setup.
Well, yeah, and you're building out that trailer with the generators and everything like that. You can't be storing a batch of pesticides where you're storing your gasoline tanks for your generator. These are both combustible things that shouldn't be stored right next to each other. So taking the proper thought to say, hey, by doing this, I'm not making something that's going to end up hurting me in the long run, is safe for my employees, because the whole point of starting a business is to hopefully grow that business. And by doing that, you have to give your employees a certain amount of safety. The labels, the local worker protection standards are all tools to help you figure out am I doing this right? Am I applying right? And making sure that safety remains at the forefront.
Absolutely.
One of the big questions we get asked about is micron size, droplet size. What should I be doing? A lot of that we also tell people, go back to the label. The label will say this needs to be, broadcast sprayed at a more coarse setting or a finer setting, like we were talking about. You're usually doing a medium setting, but compared to me, I'm at a very coarse setting when I'm doing any herbicide work in pasture.
But probably a narrower spacing as well.
Exactly. Narrower spacing, higher coarseness to get the same coverage and contact to get a good application. But when you're doing fungicides or anything like that, you need coverage.
Yep.
You need a lot of coverage, and because you need that pest or that fungus to interact with that to actually have the desired kill.
There's really no better tell than actually going out and testing some of that, doing the swath testing on your own, getting the water activated paper, or something so simple as I've done index cards and a little bit of red dye in your tank. You don't have to get crazy. Staple them to a 2x4. Set them 60 feet apart and run some swath testing. Even throw a little bit of product in to see if different products are going to perform differently.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people concerned. We actually just wrote a pass on UPass. We wrote a blog about it of how do we do test plots? Why are test plots beneficial? A lot of people think, oh, I don't have space at my farm, or I don't even have a farm to go test some of this stuff out. So your first client, you can be very vocal and open and say, hey, I know you have 1,000 acres, but you shouldn't want to spray that 1,000 acres with something that you haven't tested and that works for you, even if you are following the label rate. So what we usually offer is say, hey, can we test this product on a small area of your property that you wouldn't mind losing if everything went horribly wrong? We still follow the product label, but say, hey, let's go test it. Let's watch it, and if it goes good, then let's take this application, take it whole field, and most of the time that builds confidence with the farmer to say, hey, I'm not here just to make money and to do my job. I'm here to give you a product and a service that benefits your farm overall.
And generally, I personally don't know any of my grower customers, grower friends that, if I came to them or any of you came to them and said, hey, I'd like 1 or 2% of your acres, give me a 2 or a 5 acre block, and I want to try this X product, and I will, it's free information for you. We'll supply the product, see what we can learn on this. I don't know of any of my guys that would say absolutely not, you're not going to do that on my ground.
Yeah, and we've even had farmers still pay for the product, and we'll go out and just do the application for free, because as you're a new business, that might be suitable for some and not suitable for others. So still ask them, you want to bring in this technology for all the benefits that it has, buy some of the chemical, let's test a little bit and see how it works, and then go forward full force with a contract or something like that that's going to give the company's longevity and consistency, which is really what they're looking for when you're farming these days.
And honestly, to do the small replicable trials, that's something we haven't even gotten into at all yet. But to do small replicable trials and do 20 of them throughout, 2,000-3,000 acres, there's no better tool with the positioning software and what we have available at our hands with these drones. They're excellent for things like that.
Yeah, definitely.